You have this quote that's been reposted and tweeted about 5 trillion times, but it's worth it because it's so good. It's you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And when I first read that, that was like one of those aha mic drop type moments because it's just very true. And I think that lends itself to not really relying on willpower so much as building good systems. Can you go into system building and how to do that effectively?
So we are often told you need to be more ambitious, 10x your vision, think bigger, set bigger goals, whatever. But the truth is, setting the goal is usually like the easy part. Like I
Mm,
can set a goal right now to sell 10 million books. It took me like 3 seconds. I mean, the goal is not the hard part. It's executing on it. It's building a
right.
system of habits and behaviors that lead you inevitably toward that goal.
Mm,
And if we like connect this back with the conversation we've been having so far, what is your goal? That's your desired outcome, your target, the result, the thing you're shooting for. What is your system? It's the collection of daily habits that you follow.
mm,
And if there's ever a gap between your goal and your system, if there's ever a gap between your desired outcome and your daily habits will always win, right? Almost
mm,
by definition, your current habits are perfectly designed to deliver your current results.
mm,
So, whatever system you've been running, whatever collection of habits you've been following for the last, say, 6 months or year or whatever, it's carried you inevitably to the results that you have right now. Now, sure, habits are not the only thing that matters in life, right? You have luck and randomness and misfortune and things like that. And all those things influence outcomes too.
mm,
But I do think it's generally true that your life bends in the direction of your habits. That
mm,
as days click by and each day offers an opportunity to make a good choice or a bad choice, to build a good habit or a bad one, to take advantage of an opportunity or not, that as those days continue to roll by, the trajectory of your life starts to bend in the direction of the system that you're running, in the direction of the habits that you're following.
mm,
And so I like to think of each habit as like a little individual gear in that overall system. It's like they come together to build the machine. And I think this is one argument for why habits are so important to understand how they work and how to design them so that you can build a system that is inevitably carrying you toward this, goal that you have or this desired outcome that you have.
mhm. Do you have a way when you're wanting to build a system or when you're wanting to build a new habit or get rid of a bad habit, how do you track that for yourself? Is there do you have some sort of system? Because I think zoomed into the micro, the little actions we're talking about, that can become pretty daunting pretty quick. If you're thinking,
Mm,
I need to change all these little things, it sounds like a lot to manage it. Like, how do you
yeah.
practically focus on that?
Yeah, no, that is a good question. I think I sort of have two modes of thinking about it, I guess, and you are switching between these modes depending on what you're working on in the moment. So the first mode we've touched on a little bit, but it's kind of like I could probably summarize the two by saying, when making plans, think big. When making progress, think small. And so
Mm,
when I'm in the thinking big mode, you're thinking about strategy. And so it's stuff like, what am I optimizing for? Might be one good question to ask. Sometimes people optimize for money, sometimes they optimize for free time, sometimes they optimize for connections and relationships. It can be many different things, but you need to decide or answer that for yourself. What am I optimizing for? I think that usually connects pretty naturally to another question that we've talked about. What is the desired identity I'm trying to reinforce? So questions like that, I would put that in the thinking big bucket,
mm,
that mode of thinking. And that helps you kind of figure out or triangulate what are the types of habits I'm trying to build? What's the area of my life I'm trying to work on? But then you need to switch to that second mode, which is thinking small and trying to build some small habit or make a 1% improvement or try to find, some little thing that you can get better at today. And you asked about tracking. I do think that I don't always recommend tracking your habits. And there's a reason for that, which is if you're going to track your habits, in a sense, you're actually forcing yourself to build two habits. You have to build the habit of doing the thing, and then you also have to build the habit of recording it or writing it
right.
down and tracking it. And so, in that sense, you're making it more difficult because you're adding more things in for you to do. That said, I do think it's worth it to track a few things that are really important to you.
Mm,
And from my personal experience, I have found that, especially for habits that I have stuck with or behaviors that I have been consistent on for a long time, let's say for multiple years, almost always there's some kind of tracking component tied to that.
Mm,
So, some examples from my personal life. I mentioned my workout habit earlier. So, I've been sticking to that for years. I have a workout journal that I write the workouts down in, and I record each set and each rep. And I write that one I write by hand. And it's just, I just like doing it physically while I'm doing the workout. After I finish a set, I write it down, and I don't know, it's just
mhm,
kind of part of the process. Then for other stuff, like for nutrition, I mentioned that one. So that's been a recent one for me over the last year. That one's an actual spreadsheet where I enter in the, calories or whatever. And then there are some business ones, like every Friday, I have some tracking things like how many email subscribers, revenue, expenses, stuff like that.
mm,
So I do think that tracking can be very useful. The last thing I'll say on this is if I'm not tracking something, but I still want it to stick for a long time, I think the number one thing that helps that happen or influences whether or not that will happen is the social environment.
mm,
So we all are part of multiple tribes. Some of those tribes are large, like what it means to be American or what it means to be French. And some of those tribes are small, what it means to be a member of your local CrossFit gym or a neighbor on your street or a volunteer at the elementary school. And all of those tribes, large and small, have a set of shared expectations for how to act. They have a set of social norms for what people do in that environment. And those norms strongly influence whether a habit is attractive to you and whether you're going to stick with it for a long time. So let's take the example of a neighbor on your street. You might walk outside and see your neighbor cutting their grass and you think, oh, I need to mow the lawn too.
mhm,
And you'll stick to that habit for 10 or 20 or 30 years, like however long you live in that house. Like we wish we had that level of consistency with some of our other habits.
mm,
And why do you do it? Like partially you do it because it feels good to have a clean lawn, but mostly it feels good to have a clean lawn because you don't want to be judged by the other people in the neighborhood for being the sloppy one.
mhm,
And so it's actually the social expectation that helps encourage or solidify that habit.
yeah,
And so I think the practical takeaway here is you want to join groups, to join tribes where your desired behavior is the normal behavior.
mm,
Because if it's normal in that group, if you're surrounded by other people who are doing it consistently, it's going to be very attractive and motivating for you to do it as well. And I think that you don't necessarily need to track stuff if you've got that kind of social expectation carrying you along.
yeah. So good. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, there are all those studies about like the "show me your friends, I'll show you your future" type thing.
Mhm.
And that's a really simplified version, but I think you're right. Like putting it, and again, these are just things that we don't consciously make choices about often. We kind of walk into life or situations or friend groups. It's based on where the neighborhood you were in and the schools you went to and all that stuff. But to zoom out and say, I actually have a choice in the matter and I can actually put myself in better positions and better environments to be more of who I want to be, that's really empowering.